Hey, we're back in the black hole of real estate, and today we're going to talk about condos and special assessments and how they are handling these situations where they have to do repairs and a lot of money's involved. So, this is your host, Ron Wojciechowski, for the black hole of real estate and special assessments. They've been just raging for the past few years because we've had these hurricanes that have come through. And whether it's Ian or Milton or one of the other ones that's caused damages at the condos, in order to pay for those repairs, a lot of buildings and associations have had to fall back onto what they call special assessments. So if you're not familiar with what that is, or maybe have some kind of an idea but like to know more about it, the first thing I would say is this. Every condo association has a fee, and most often it's charged monthly, but it could be quarterly or annual, but there's a fee that covers things like your common area maintenance, the elevators, could be taking care of carpeting in the hallways, so to speak, things like that. But it also could be for the building insurance, like for the whole building, you've got to insure that building, right? So the association insures the building, like from the walls outside, but then the owners can also have their own insurance policy, and that would cover like the contents and liability and things that are inside of the condo. So when we look at water, sewer, trash, those all typically would come through the homeowners association fee every month. Maybe things like cable TV or any other things like that. So your monthly HOA fee covers a lot of things, and then some of it could also go to what you call reserves. And a reserve might be a savings account, which could be for an eventual roof replacement or the elevators or the balconies or painting the building or something that goes along the line of inspections for the property to make sure everything is going to be okay. There's all the new rules in place to make sure that the condo buildings are safe and viable for years to come. So when we have that money being put aside as part of the budget, you look at the reserve study, it's going to say how much money is set aside. So if there was an amount of money needed for the roof, and let's just say $1 million, now you've got to save for it over 10, 20, 30 years, whatever the lifespan of the roof is going to be, or the remainder of it. If there happens to be something that occurs, like a hurricane, where the roof has to be replaced or repaired sooner, that could really turn the budget upside down. Same for balconies, same for anything else that would be a big capital expense of the building association that has to get paid. And now we run into it. Let's say there's only a $500,000 saved for the roof, and now it immediately needs to be done, and not in 5 or 10 years. Where's that other 500,000 going to come from? If there is 100 units in that building, well, that's just simple math. You're going to pay, 5 grand each or whatever that number's going to be. And then each unit owner would just pay in a special assessment. Usually you just write them a check. It could be payments. It could be a number of ways, but it's got to get paid. And I've been through these. Some of them are pretty abrupt. I mean, when you get a $10,000 assessment that's due in 30 days, like, I mean, if you're planning for it, it's one thing. But when you're not planning for it, you got to go find the 10K sometimes. I've seen buildings would have 50,000, $100,000 worth of assessments with just catastrophic damage in there. So it could really be a problem for a lot of people when we get into the situation where the special assessments are going to take place. So what would we need to look at if we were going to, let's say, sell a condo? If there was a special assessment that's in place, then it's due. Because once it's in the meeting minutes and declared and voted on and it's in, someone's got to pay for it. So most times the buyer is going to make an offer written in such a way that they want the seller to pay off everything at closing if there's a special assessment due. So if it's a $5,000 assessment, seller goes to closing, they get their money, and out of that money, the $5,000, if that's what's due, it comes out, it goes to the association, and it's all paid off real good. Now, there's a different thing that will happen. Some associations will go to SBA and they'll get a loan. Now you run into each individual unit owner has to pay a portion of that loan, so they each have a loan. In a case where I closed recently, it was about $120 a month for 7 years, was going to be the association's loan with the SBA cost per person. So if you owned a unit there, you pay your association fee, and let's say it was $700 a month. And then you have this extra $100 and $120. You pay $820 a month in two parts, 700 and 120. The 120 ends when the loan is paid off. your portion of it. And the association fee just goes on and on and on forever until you sell the condo. Usually, if there's a loan in place, and I've seen this a lot where the next buyer could just take it over, like installments. Like for instance, if you're paying the HOA fee every month, at closing it stops, right? Because the person selling it no longer is going to pay it anymore. Buyer takes it over. So they will check the box and in the contract, and it just says seller to make payments up until the closing date, buyer to make payments after the closing date. In the case of some of these loans, they also will let them take over the payments. Except we just had one recently where the $120 a month over, many, many years came up to about 15 grand. Now, prorated back was more like 10,000 because you can back out the interest if you pay it off right now. But the buyer wanted to just take over those payments for 7 years and just pay it over time. And what we found out is because the type of SBA loan it was, it had to be paid off at closing. Well, that's not what the contract said, and nobody knew about it. And this had just taken place maybe 2, 3 weeks, no more than 4 weeks sooner. If the property had closed sooner, they could have just taken over the payments. But once they had that exact number, it had to get paid off at closing. So now the buyer and seller had to work this out because the seller was not responsible for it. It was the buyer's responsibility. But now the buyer had to come up with another 10,000 at closing. They weren't thinking about. They were just, we'll just pay the loan, not a problem. But after putting a bunch of money down on the condo, that extra 10,000, it was a sticker shock to them and a surprise to them on the day of closing. So not cool, not good. And it took some cooler heads to prevail in the situation. Ultimately, we found a way to get it closed and keep that deal together. But you think about it, you go through all the work to purchase a condo and all the work to sell a condo as the buyer and the seller. And on a closing day, we were missing $10,000, $11,000 that nobody knew was due. Matter of fact, all the papers were actually signed. It was only after the closing when they went to take care of it with the association and says, "Hey, we need $10,000." They're like, "Okay." So, even when you're dealing with professionals on both sides, and I mean, we did our job on our side. The other agent did a great job as well. Title company did everything they were supposed to do, and yet this was a gotcha. It was a big surprise. Now, this doesn't mean that you should be freaked out and nervous about buying condos. Quite honestly, you just have to have quality people doing all the work and hope that you don't run into those weird situations. That's why I wanted to talk about it today. So that way, if you are purchasing a condo and you understand about special assessments, and there's one where there's a loan in place, even when we checked with the management company, they told us that they could take over the payment. The problem was something had changed between the time the contract was written and the end, and ultimately the seller didn't get a notification, and neither did title get any notification this was going to be due and payable. And that's where the problem came in. So even if everybody's doing the right thing, there's still a chance where something can go a little sideways. Good news again. We got it worked out. Everybody's happy. Sellers got to sell, they got their money, buyers got to buy, they got the condo, so everybody's thrilled. Now, but in the moment, it got a little bit crazy. So to walk it back, special assessments, these are used to pay for major repairs where there is not enough money in the reserves, the savings account for the association. So big bill came up and not enough money in the bank. What do? You go borrow it. You can borrow it from the SBA or you can borrow it from the owners or charge it to the owners. In this case, they needed to get a lot of work done. So they went and got the SBA loan. And there was a lot of accumulating costs that happened along the way. So they kept adding to the bill. But in most cases, it's just a special assessment. They go to each owner. Now, this can be different depending on the building's bylaws. And let's suppose that you got 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom and different square footages. Some associations will charge their monthly fee based on bedrooms, based on square footage. If you get the little studio, should you pay the same amount as the one that has, a 3,000 square foot condo? It's whatever the bylaws say. It's not what I feel about it. It's not my emotions about it. It's certainly not what, the buyers, owners could want to negotiate. It's whatever the bylaws say, and that's voted on by the association, and their leadership council. So, look at that. There are varying amounts for the monthly assessments, which is your monthly fee. And special assessment, they can also charge it based on that same type of thing, just same amount for everybody, or a differing amount based on square footage or bedrooms or something like that. That's a lot about special assessments. It's a great way for the association to get the work done and done timely, especially with all the laws that are now in place because of the disaster in Miami. The buildings are slowly but surely all getting fixed up and all going to meet that standard, which one day will be really good and hopefully we never have to run into that situation ever again. Really, really tough thing to just to sit back and watch and understand. But that's what I got for you this week. So special assessments at the condo. You got a little bit more information about it right now. If you got questions, just chat with me below. Definitely subscribe. We want you guys on here, twice a week when we do these podcasts for you now with video. And we'll be watching to see what comes in next. This is your host, Ron Wojciechowski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.